Hey everyone, welcome to FilmSnobbery Live. I'm your host, Nick LaRue, and we have a show for you this week. Originally, this wasn't even supposed to be a show. I was kind of interviewed out after coming back from Georgia, and I had a bunch of other stuff. I did an interview for the Santa Barbara International Film Festival that just kind of came up out of nowhere. I've been doing a lot of things, and it's crazy. And I'm actually preparing for even more things in the very near future. Next week, I'll be at the Boston Underground Film Festival, and there's some great films there I'm really looking forward to seeing. Some of them not even like indies, like Immaculate is there. I'm looking forward to checking that out. Boy Kills World is going to be there. I'm interested in checking that out as well. But there are some really good indie films there too. And the great part is that it's right in my backyard because I live in Massachusetts. So that's a fantastic thing that I get to attend. But then very shortly after that, I will be traveling to Kansas City for Panic Fest. And that is going to also be a fantastic time. I'll get to run into some folks that I actually know there, which is great. Joe Lynch will be there, who is in my book, Behind the Scenes of Indie Film Marketing. He was kind enough to do an interview with me for that while he was doing promotion for his film Suitable Flesh, which is out now. You guys should check that out on streaming or Blu-ray. And then after that, I'm heading down to Jacksonville for the Jacksonville Film Festival. Which I was at last year, had a great time. I'm looking forward to being there again. I'm on the jury this year. I'm actually in the jury with my book twin, Marty Lang, which I love to talk about. And we have tons of great things. And also, there's a lot of changes that will be coming in the very near future to Film Snobbery. And I hope all of them are viewed as positive. I'm viewing them as positive. Not only is Film Snobbery, I mean, we'll still be doing what we do. It just changing a little bit of the way that we do it. And we'll have more of a conversation about that later. But for now, I would love to get into the meat of the show. I want to introduce all of you to someone that you should all be familiar with if you're fans of Film Snobbery Live, because he's been on the show at least one other time, maybe two. Friend of the show. He's doing a Kickstarter campaign right now for Some Call It Luck. And hopefully, if you haven't donated there yet, you should do so because I told you so. If you haven't and you're not going to, that's fine too. But you know what you can do? You can share because it's free and doesn't cost you anything, and it makes a big impact and difference. So we have a great guest. His name is John Schiefer. He's going to be joining us right meow. Come on, pop up. Oh, there he is.
There we
All
go. John out of the box.
Yeah, John in the box. Yeah, because sometimes you have to dig deep. You dig deep and you find a John in the box. You
Yay.
crank the thing and then he pops up and he's like, "Hello," and I'm like, "Ah."
Yeah. Yikes.
How are you, sir?
Fundraising is hard.
Fundraising is hard.
Yeah, they don't tell you that. The people raising the money seem like they're always happy, but that's true with all of advertising and promotion. Like, you just got to pretend it's happy. But it's this vocation is really hard. Like, wrestling against the internal demons of coming up with a story, figuring out who you want to collaborate with and how to actually make it from paper to get it on the screen, finding money, getting it out there. All of that's, it's just like, I forget how hard it is after it's out and just celebrate when something's successful. But like, the actual making of it is strenuous.
Yeah.
In every way. So that's how I'm doing.
Fair enough. No, I mean, and you're absolutely right. I mean, it becomes that secondary full-time job that, you wake up and you check the numbers and you're like, okay, how do I move the needle today? And, trying to come up with ideas, and it's weird because it's like, I thought I already did this job. Like, I was the idea person. I made the movie, or I came up with the idea for the movie that I'm trying to make, or the widget that I'm trying to sell, or the thing,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's the creative aspect, and it's like that doesn't seem to stop. But then you're also integrating marketing and capitalism and other aspects that are, maybe not everyone's forte. It's like learning a completely different side of a business.
And what I'm discovering is, like, the algorithms seem to be hostile to creativity or stuff that speaks truth to power, or things that are not. They've actively said anything that is politically divisive, Twitter, X notwithstanding, they are the swamp, gutter fire, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
They've
I had a casual acquaintance of mine that I hesitate to call her a friend, but yeah, casual acquaintance of mine who was on. Um, she's on multiple social media apps, but one of the ones she's most frequented on is Instagram. And she was posting about all of the stuff that was happening with like anti-abortion stuff because she's a woman and this directly affects her. So, and originally she's from Kentucky. So like she's has that, let's call it the southern street cred on top of it. And, so she was just posting not even like nothing like photos or anything sex positive per se or anything at all, just posting about abortion. And the her post got removed. Meta removed the posts. Just like, yeah, you can't talk about that. I'm like,
yeah.
bullshit, you can't talk about that, you know?
So like when the algorithms do that automatically, and
Yeah.
when the people reinforce it, meaning the people running training the algorithms, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
the whole thing becomes just really all the more difficult. And I like I wonder. I've seen TikTok didn't even allow my pitch video to be posted. Something was controversial about it, either what I talked about, uh, one of the clips, whatever, and
Yeah.
they've been throttling my posts since then. So
Yeah.
Facebook is active about it. Amazon is active about it. Uh, I think Brian Newman puts out an email
Yep.
about this specifically, and he talked about it, and it's just like even if it wasn't actively hostile, it's difficult, but to be in an actively hostile environment makes it worse. And this is coming from a white guy
Yeah.
who's hetero cis. Like I like my wife, and she is a woman, and I am a man. Um, so I can't imagine how difficult it is for the people who are not those things,
Yeah.
because their stories are as important, if not more important, than what I'm trying to say
No, and
to culture.
yeah, no, and I've experienced it myself, not as directly. I mean, on TikTok specifically, I had a situation where I put out a post. It was actually from a FilmSnobbery Live interview, just a clip, and we were talking about something having to do with people can are becoming the new what was it, like the new breed of filmmakers are basically the TikTokers and the YouTubers and stuff like that. And I posted that clip and I was like, huh, interesting. Why did this clip before it get 1,800 views and this one got 6? And the
Yeah.
reason why, my wife nailed it actually. She's like, because she listened to it. My wife works in marketing as well, so do I, and I'm close to it. So like for me, I needed the distance of another opinion, educated opinion. And so she was like, I think it's because you used the word YouTube in a TikTok clip, and so they may have censored it or downvoted it or however we want to call it. Because you're using another platform name, like their AI scrubbers basically identified this and said, "Nah, we're just going to bury that," you know. Um,
So if we can acknowledge kind of those premises
yeah,
of how difficult it is to make art, and we can go on a rant about how important it is.
yeah,
I just put out a video earlier this week about why I'm an independent filmmaker,
mm-hmm,
um, and the environment is hostile. I think we are in a space where not only it's necessary for a completely different modality of doing things. It shouldn't be this difficult on any level, and it's vitally important that a culture. I think we're watching the downfall of Western civilization or the transition of it into something else. There has never been a more important time for independent voices to be speaking truth to power. And so I think we're primed for need wise and environmentally for a revolution.
yeah, and that's definitely, yeah. You and I have had many private
Wonderful.
conversation, yeah, private conversations about kind of where the issues are and possibly where some of the solutions lie as well. And
Yeah.
and I even when we don't agree on everything, I very much value those discussions because because they're not always had. I mean, those conversations, I'm sure there's filmmakers out there and filmmaking groups that are out there that are going, we don't know what the fuck to do. And I have to imagine how frustrating that is to not be in control of your own career path. You know, you feel that every time you're on first base and you're trying to steal second, you're getting thrown out. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a sports guy, but that's the closest analogy I can think about, especially when we talk about, you know, things like white privilege and stuff like that, and we talk about like people that do start on second base or they start on third base, and like the rest of us just have to catch up. And there's, you know, so you're absolutely right when you said before, like imagine folks that are more disadvantaged, whether it is because they identify differently, or you know, because they're a different color or they're whatever. It is frustrating to think that on top of that there are systems actively working against them. And so the question is, okay, yeah, so how do you fix those things? And, you know, some of the things that you and I have talked about, I think are pretty solid ideas that still need a little bit of refinement in
For sure.
yeah, in the you know, the devil in the details kind of things. But, you know, I think that the idea of, and, you know, whether some people want to call this more communist, socialist, whatever, I don't care. At the end of the day, we're just trying to make some art, people. Like, we're trying to also entertain people. Like, yeah, there's the truth to power aspect. Absolutely. You mentioned that in your first pitch video for Some Call It Luck. Like, I think we're like, there's two reasons why people make art. You know, or this was a video, one of your video thing of weeks, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, that's what it
confusing
was.
it. Sorry. You know, I watch a lot. I watch a lot of your videos. I am one of the
Thank
people
you.
who watch. You're welcome. So, like, I do watch them, but I do get them confused. You know, where you say that there's two reasons why people make movies. One is to speak truth to power. The other is entertainment, and you know, other stuff like that. I agree, and you know, making people laugh or making people care or empathize or sympathize or want to see change or see themselves in a position that they don't get to see themselves in reality. Those are all valid reasons to want to do things and shouldn't be as hard to do. And other countries make it easier. They will give you grants. They will give you government assistance. They will give you things without having to jump through as many hoops
Right.
as what you have to do here, where the government is basically like, you know, you get pushed out of your mother and then they just say, well, you're on your own, kid, you know. It's frustrating, but
And
yeah.
well, in not defense of the United States at all, because I think ours is hostile. But a friend of mine is a woman filmmaker and a person of color, and she talked about England being hostile as well to
I believe
her.
that.
Like it's very much entrenched.
Colonialism.
Uh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
a class system,
yeah, yeah.
and I'm sure that's true in India as well.
Yeah, but I will say, if their television is to be is anything to be believed or seen differently, you have a better chance of seeing disabled people, people of color, people from other countries on British television acting, being on those panel shows that they do, you know, all this kind of stuff, you know, than in the U.S., where we just want to pick the pretty people. You know what I mean?
Sure,
And
sure, sure, sure.
you know, and so some movement of the needle is good. Could it be more? Absolutely. I think
Yeah,
that
yeah,
that could be said everywhere. But you
yeah.
know, at least they're doing something. And you know, but yeah, the conversation then became, you know, well, what is the solution? And the solution, you know, being without kind of getting deep into it. You know, collective the strikes kind of gave me the inspiration of, you know, collective bargaining is the future of independent filmmaking. I think that, you know, you've turned a little bit more, you know, controlling the means of distribution, the means of production, and I agree
Yeah,
with that as well. Yeah,
I think what we're both orbiting, whether it's collective bargaining or seizing the means of distribution, we're talking about empowering people and working together as a group and sharing resources rather than hoarding them.
yeah,
Because, uh, like, we can piss and rant about the billionaires all day,
yeah,
but if you do the math, there's only like five of them, and there's 330 million of us. And if we got together and decided to change things, things would change.
yeah,
And so, like if there's enough filmmakers who are willing to just see things differently, to retask and reorient the directions that we want to and are willing to go, then a whole universe is possible.
Yeah. But my
And
biggest
it,
thing that I see, not that, sorry to cut you off, the thing I see about that is disturbing and also somewhat understandable considering the economy that we live in right now and the difficulty everyone is having, just existing in some cases, is, that no one wants to be the first person in the pool. You know what I mean? And that's frustrating because what part of what this will need is talented people to say, okay, I know I have these aspirations to make 30 movies in my career and to do all these great things and stuff, and having to tell them, yeah, I understand that, but you are a fantastic organizer, or you are a fantastic fundraiser, or you are a fantastic person who does X thing. And the movement, as it were, the revolution, as we're calling it, needs that skill more than we need you to do a movie right now. But no one wants to be the first person to put their career on hold and their aspirations on hold to basically do clerical work or outreach or be the first person to say, like, whatever. Now we are lucky to live in a world where we'll have people like Mark Duplass and the Duplass brothers and stuff like that who will very much espouse independent film, and they put their money where their mouth is. I'll give them credit where credit's due, but they also have been in the industry long enough where they can afford to kind of sidestep a couple of things and take a couple more risks than the average filmmaker can do, to move the needle.
I find it interesting that you juxtapose filmmaking and the clerical work. I don't see that distinction as necessary. I think that if we can prove a business model and they're not, the two things aren't separate. For me to promote my movie,
Mm-hmm.
I have to have a list of journalists, and I just need that, and it needs to be viable list of journalists to reach out to.
Right.
And so when my fellow filmmaker friend gave me a list of journalists, admittedly an outdated list, but still someplace to start,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I could share that and we can all update it, and then it becomes a thing that I do as I'm filmmaking, and as you do as you're doing your book outreach or film snobbery
Sure.
promotion, or the short films that you're working on. We're doing it together and it's happening together. So I don't see them as mutually exclusive at all. We just have to figure out who is good at these things, who has the extra spare cycles, because not again, back to a lot of the people who really need to be speaking the truth to power stuff. They have to work full-time jobs on top of being an independent filmmaker. Mm-hmm. They might not have the extra time.
Right.
They will have very valid opinions on what could and should be done, and those opinions need to be heeded because they see what's not working maybe more clearly than those who don't have to work. But I don't see it as mutually exclusive. As I have to solve problems, why not share the solution with everybody else?
Well, that's not really where I was going with it. Where I was going with it is that, if I told you, all right, so that particular list, if I said to you, that list is fantastic, but to make that list current, even with doing it part-time, meant that you wouldn't get to work on Some Call It Luck or your next film for 10 years. But it will enable 100 other filmmakers to progress in their publicity efforts because of the work you're doing, which is valuable to the greater good of everyone else. Would that be something, and this is obviously a case-by-case basis, right? Every person's going to have a different answer to this. Would you still be gung-ho to be like, well, yeah, I'm still going to work on it, I'm still going to do this? Because it does come down to bandwidth. And, like you said, there are filmmakers that are working day jobs as well as making movies, or they're, doing whatever. And you only have so many hours in a day, and
for those listening in, this is a typical back and forth for Nick and me. We come up with ideas and we go back and forth and solve problems. So you're witnessing one of our conversations. Yeah. So let's take your 10-year idea and amalgamate it, assimilate it into what I'm talking
No,
about.
it's fine. And that,
Rather,
by the way, real quick, that's what I also mean by like no one wants to be the first person in the pool to go like, yes, but I also have dreams I'm trying to accomplish that are creative and this and that, and to put those on hold to do work that is not that is no one wants to be the first person. Seems to not want to be the first person to do that. And I am not the first person to say that. That seems to be a theme of people I speak to all year round. This year specifically.
so let's take uh, uh, that list of journalists, for instance.
Sure.
And we'll just riff on that. It happens to be 2,000 journalists long. It's outdated. There's probably more journalists. They're probably different at different venues, whatever. All that crap needs to be updated.
Yep.
So I could take, it's not going to take me 10 years, but we'll stick with that number just for simplicity.
Yeah.
So you're talking about me devoting my time exclusively to it. I'm a pretty efficient dude. Mm-hmm. I don't think it would take me 10 years if on this specific list to get it updated. But let's say it is a task that would take 10 years. Maybe it's contacting every single independent theater in the United States,
right,
and figuring out who's in charge and their demographic, building that out. Rather than having one person do it, if you have 20 people doing it,
right,
then you're talking about 6 months. And it's not a consecutive 6 months. It's a week here, a week there. And suddenly people are making movies and the list is being generated.
Yes, however, and the only pushback I'll give you on that is number one, there is always finding a group of people to agree to do that is not as simple as all that. And then you also run into, especially for a longer term project, you really are going to have to get people that are passionate about it. And I think that we've also had the conversation in the past of like, no one is as passionate about your project as you are. Then, if school has taught me anything, there's always the group project person who does the work of the at least 3 other people, and that you know, at the expense of their own time, sanity, whatever. And so, you know,
so what we need to do
so
then
I might oversimplify it, or I may throw out numbers or whatever that may not be accurate, but at the same time, I don't think they're wholly inaccurate. Also, if you're someone who, if working in corporate has also given me an indication, if you're good at something, I'm giving you something else of that to do. Like, the work doesn't end just because you finish the Excel spreadsheet here. Here's another one. You know, I mean, that's how things get done. I mean, that's, you know, I mean, and I'm not saying, especially, you know, it's difficult if you're dealing with volunteers. So are we talking, when we talk about this, are we talking about people who are being paid to work on these things for an entity, or, you know, as an organization for like tax
look at it this
benefits?
way. If I'm let's take the indie theater one, because it's a better example, because it's more immediate need that produces a more immediate result.
Yep.
I want my movie to be distributed in theaters. I do not want to sell my movie to a distributor because they are notorious for screwing filmmakers.
Absolutely.
Even the good ones screw filmmakers.
Yeah, we agree with that.
We happen to be in an environment right now that is more predatory than it was in the 90s or early 2000s, perhaps, but it's bad. So we need...
And with a constantly shrinking amount of doors for filmmakers to go into for distribution. You know, I mean, one of the conversations that got us talking about this was when Tubi decided, like, yeah, we're not going to just accept any old thing anymore. We're going to, you know,
so
we're going to focus on production.
They're dead. That killed them as a distributor.
Yeah.
So if I want to make my movie and just look at it myself, use it as a kind of emotional or mental masturbation, I can do that. That's a thing that I can do. That's not what I'm about. I'm about, like, there's no point for me to make an art that is in dialogue with culture without having it be actually in dialogue with culture. And that means putting it out there, getting it out there in an economically sustainable way, such that I can keep doing this as a vocation in the future. That means ROI. I have to make my money back, either for investors, or if I don't have any investors and I have donors on Kickstarter, so I don't have to keep running Kickstarter campaigns. And I'm not on Kickstarter, by the way. I'm on Seed and Spark, just for clarification.
Seed and Spark. Check out Some Call It Luck. Donate, share if you cannot donate.
www.somecallitluck.com.
Absolutely.
So for me to do that in an economically viable way, I need theatrical distribution, and not simply getting it in theaters to get the word out for some other platform, because there may not be another platform.
Yeah.
This may be it. So I need to do that. In order to solve that problem, I need to find out where these independent theaters are. I have to create this list on my own. Why not share it with other people and help them, teach them what I'm doing? Say, you want your movie out there, you want to make return, here's how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
We need to follow these steps. Call these numbers. Google independent theater. Call the National Association of Independent Theater Owners, or whatever it's called.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, NATO, National Association of Theater Owners. Yeah,
So simply
it's the
doing
other
that,
NATO, the one without the
yeah,
weapons.
the slightly less evil one. Uh, the 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 necessity to do that as a filmmaker is unambiguous. People are already doing it. They just call it the festival circuit. If we ditch the festival circuit as an end, because we are not trying to license our movie or sell it to someone, but instead go straight to theaters
Mm-hmm.
and sell it that way, or license it that way, or partner with theaters that way, that's a completely different equation. And now it's something that we all have to solve in order to do what we want to do.
Yeah.
So either it's not that it's taking time away from me. I have to do this.
Yeah.
It's like, you have to be on set to make your movie. You have to get it in theaters to make money back. Full stop.
Yeah.
So if you recognize that, then this list, collaborative list of independent theaters, what they want, where they're located, who to contact, becomes a necessary element that we all contribute to. Are there going to be people who are going to not contribute to it? Maybe. Are there people who are not going to be given editor status on the list? Certainly. But the list is still worth sharing, and the people who you trust, like you, like Dan Mervish, like the guy you interviewed a couple of weeks ago, out of Ira, yeah, he would 100%. I would trust him.
Oh, Ira's, yeah, he's a fantastic
He's probably
person.
significantly a few levels above that, but like he would be those are the kind of people that I trust. And I know, obviously, I just listed men. There are women also.
Oh yeah.
That are excellent filmmakers and who are trustworthy with this kind of list. So when we all have to build it, we have to build this thing. Why not do it together and build something great that we can share? And that way, none of us have to take 10 years off to build the list.
Now, I agreed with everything that just came out of your mouth. In terms of yeah, there absolutely needs to be a groundswell of support for filmmakers for other filmmakers, and the education aspect of that is also another very valuable and viable aspect of this as well. People need to know that there are options. They need to know how to access those options. They need to know how to negotiate those options. The other option, or the other part of that, and this is kind of also going through what I was kind of talking about a little bit, part of this conversation, was like having an organization that helps handle some of these things, not as a means to act as a middleman or take a cut off the top or anything like that, more as a means of managing the negotiations aspect, so that when you are coming to these theaters, independent theaters or otherwise, you're not coming to them as a singular filmmaker, but you're coming to them as a collective. And you're saying, I represent 1,000 filmmakers or 500 filmmakers or whatever. We can argue what the number is later.
Yeah.
I represent X amount of filmmakers that are providing X amount of content for you for however long you need it. I can take less of a hit than I can afford to take less of a hit than the studios can. And so because of that, we can offer a better deal, or as good a deal as what the studios are offering you. And we're not going to sit there and impose a bunch of crazy like screen restrictions and other things on you.
Yeah.
So that is where you get competitive. And that is where those things become the idea of that revolution aspect becomes a viable business aspect. And I know that like we tend to but a little bit heads on the aspect of like, the more of the socialism or communist or capitalist approaches to those things, because unfortunately in the world I think you do need some level of money to sustain anything that it needs to be done.
I mean, that was the foundation of the economic argument for people to join in participating in the list of independent theaters. Is it is an economic necessity to get an ROI for your movie.
Mm-hmm. But
I don't
they
like
also
capitalism.
with
I don't happen to be a socialist either.
yeah.
I don't have an economic system that I've seen that I adhere to, for the record.
No, totally, and I completely understand that, because I haven't either. I do know that I'm not great with capitalism, because it usually
Yeah,
comes in
yeah,
at the expense of someone else.
yeah.
It is,
It's a zero sum game.
yeah, and also you run into the conversations, especially in marketing, where I had this discussion with the gentleman who runs the Bolded Slugs podcast, Zeus Ryan. I had this conversation with him too of like, at some point, like the goal of any public company is to continuously generate profit, which for like streaming companies, let's take Netflix for instance, right, or Amazon, requires them to continuously get more people on board their platforms. And I'm like, well, there is a finite amount of people on the planet. Like at some point you will reach critical mass and cannot go any further.
Yeah.
And so then you would have failed at capitalism, because your only other options you have at that point are drive prices up and or hurt or overwork or whatever other people in order to satisfy those needs of those shareholders.
And you're seeing precisely that at all of the streamers.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what you're witnessing right now.
Yeah. And P.S. for everyone watching, I know this is not the general Q&A type of Film Snobbery Live that you generally see, but this is a fantastic conversation that John and I have kind of participated in while I was driving to the South Georgia Film Festival, and we've had a little bit, via DM and stuff on Twitter and stuff like that in the past, and we just every time we have discussions about stuff like this is kind of where those things lead, because these are big questions for our industry in the future of this industry, that aren't just solved by like, well, we'll just use this distributor instead. It's like, yes, use them until you can't, and then what? And then if you control the means of distribution, then you don't have to worry about that. And
I'm one of the guys that's not content in simply stating a problem like that. Any fool can do that. I want to fix the problem and then move on to what I actually want to do.
Absolutely.
I don't want to just sit around and gripe. I've got better things to do with my life.
And that's and that's a big thing that happens in this industry is, I think that it's amplified by the fact of social media, is that everyone sounds like all they do all day is bitch. And honestly, there are days that even I sound like all I do all day is bitch.
It depends on the platform.
John's been on those calls.
Yeah. Well, they're not all of the calls. Like, we all have to vent. I was venting about how difficult it is to run a crowdfunding campaign and resist the internal demons that say, I'm not a good writer, I'm not a good director, I don't have enough friends to actually make this project, nobody's going to believe in it, whatever. Like, we all have to fight those.
Yeah.
And it is helpful to talk to people. Like, we're a social species, and sometimes simply articulating a thought to you or you to me allows me to give it form. And once it has that form, then I can wrestle with it differently.
Well, absolutely. And that's precisely what happened to me today when I was talking with my wife. She was on her lunch break, and I was just kind of, I wasn't lamenting something, but I was trying to come up with a solution to a problem. And then she, in the process of in between bites of chips, was like, well, what if you did this? And I was like, okay, if this is this, then, then it became of like a piecing together of ideas, which then blew up into like a larger conversation, which sucks when the other person on that conversation has to go like, but I have a meeting I have to get to, and so I'm like, no, fuck you, I need you to stay here for like 3 more hours. I just need 3 more hours. Yeah. It's
the beauty is like our brains are pattern recognition machines, so the conversation is happening in her subconscious, and the next time you talk, she will have more information.
Yeah. Well, and I was smart enough this time to start writing it down. And in the way that my brain works, I was able to come up with a a one sheet within an hour, that could be presented alongside a business plan or something like that, like a more comprehensive business plan to VCs, to this, to that, to secure funding for something. Now that's a completely different thing that I'm not even remotely ready to talk about yet, but except for maybe with you offline. But the right, but but for what we're talking about now, no, there is a way. And also, by the way, like opening up the conversation of going back and putting theatrical first brings back then the conversation of streaming and Blu-ray and all that kind of stuff as your long tail again, and because you control your own window. And
There's
yes,
this.
it requires more marketing because no one knows who you are, and I get that. But eventually, they will, or they'll know the entity, or that this is coming out of, or
Yeah.
these kind of things. Like, so there's once you get like your rubber stamp of like I'm part of this, and this is a noted industry standard at this point, it becomes a little easier in terms of that kind of level of control, quality control, or whatever, from the public perspective. But go ahead, you were saying something.
There was this amazing essay that a woman wrote. She used to work for one of the social media giants, and she talked about the menu. And it's something that my brother, when he was in business school, told me. It's like if you're in a business deal, you offer the client two options, both of which are good for you. They assume those are the only two options. So this idea of the woman kind of riffed on that in a way that really changed the way I think about things. When people look at streaming, Netflix designs it so that you think that Netflix has everything.
Yeah.
And they create this idea of a menu. But the problem is there are a lot of movies, good ones, really important ones, that are not on streaming.
Yeah.
And there is no place for them. And when I don't know if society is going to be kept too busy with the noise of Netflix, or if they'll realize it. And if they do realize it, if people realize this in mass, then I think you'll have a return to physical media.
Yeah.
Because that is the only place you can see certain movies. The one that comes to mind that's vital right now, there are two, and I don't think either of them are on streaming. One is How to Blow Up a Pipeline.
Yep.
Amazing movie, unbelievably powerful, brilliantly done. I think it won a Spirit Award for Best Editing, and its editing was not its biggest strength. This movie was so powerful that when it came out, it triggered an FBI warning.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Based on the title. Based on the title.
Yeah,
alone.
yeah. It's about blowing up an oil pipeline in a way that doesn't hurt anybody physically,
Right.
and makes an economic statement for people who are terrified that the earth is getting warmer, because that is happening. We're witnessing it, and they want to actually make meaningful change. It's not enough simply to get in your car and feel sad while you drive 50 miles to Starbucks.
Yeah.
So that movie was powerful. Another one, this is probably on Criterion, is Battle for Algiers.
Oh, that one. Yeah, that's a fantastic movie. And I think you're right. I think that is on Criterion.
So both of those movies are just absolutely spectacular, and they talk about revolution, and they talk about possibly How to Blow Up a Pipeline is brilliant because it talks about non-violent means, meaning non-human violent means,
right,
of waging a revolution. Like, that's where we're at. We're at the space of, we are watching tyranny approaching at the door. Like, it's here. We're watching people commit genocide casually and say it's the right thing to do. And even the independent film world, if you watch the Independent Spirit Awards, there was a guy outside the Spirit Awards with a megaphone blasting over and over again, "Ceasefire now."
Yep.
And some of the artists came on stage and they're like, I love what he's saying, but they wouldn't say it directly, because everyone in Hollywood who has said it directly has gotten blacklisted. Like, that's the environment that we're in. And so back to the menu idea. If people don't know that there are other options, they assume that what's presented to them are the only options. And this is by design.
Yeah.
And so they curate the list of menu options very carefully. So when there's like this realization that Steve Jobs had and I had, and it's huge, is when you realize, when you look around and you see that everything that you see, unless you spend a lot of time in nature, was designed by a person who is not that much different than you, then this cascading epiphany happens is I can redesign it differently.
Yeah.
It can look different. There's nothing like there doesn't have to be roads made of asphalt or concrete. There doesn't have to be roads at all. You can ride your bicycle on dirt. You can walk. Just as an example. And so like when you start realizing that the entire universe is open, the world is open for what we choose, how we choose to organize human civilization, I think a myriad of possibilities become, we can see them.
Yeah. I feel you, man, and I agree. The only thing you run into with that is, obviously, people try to organize, and there's someone who tries to stop those people from doing so, and that is the where the tyranny that you also mentioned kind of comes into play. Of no one wants to be interrupted in their quest and pursuit for that one extra, quarter of a percent of stock price, and that becomes very problematic. And
Well, that's
but
you already mentioned that with the reason we're having the conversation about independent cinema
yeah,
is because what do the you know the data better than I do. What do the studios actually require of theaters when, like with AMC, for instance?
I mean, it's different with everyone, but I mean, I'm going to use the general
Yeah,
knowledge
yeah.
of if you are, let's take a movie like Harry Potter or Star Wars or something. Let's take Star Wars just because I like Star Wars. New Star Wars movie is going to come out, right? So I'm a theater booker for the studios, and I'm letting the AMC or Regal or whatever know, hey, this is coming up, and it's in the pipeline. It's on the calendar. It comes out on this date. So we're going to put this in six of your theaters, on six screens in this theater, here, and then extrapolate that throughout the country, world really. And then what we're going to do is for opening weekend, we're going to take 90% plus of your door, so your ticket sales. We're not going to touch your concessions, but we are also going to require you to play specific trailers. We're going to require you to have specific signage. We're going to require you to, you as a manager in an AMC have no say in what they are. And if you say, well, yeah, that's great, but we have this film festival that will pay us like cash money and we get 100% of the door of, blah, 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 and concessions and blah, blah, blah on that particular weekend, they go, okay, you don't want to play ball because you want to make some money. Well, you know what? We want to make some money too. How about you just never get Star Wars ever? Like, not this episode, but the next episode and the next episode and the next episode. It becomes
And it's not just
it's a
Star Wars.
mafia
Star
deal.
Wars is owned by Disney, so Disney will say you're not getting any Disney movies.
Yeah, that's correct, and that does happen. And by the way, it's a sliding scale, so that 90% opening weekend becomes 80% or 85% secondary weekend, regardless of whether or not it's like, oh, we had an 80% or 35% drop in attendance for that movie. Oh, that's fine, but we're still going to charge you, the 80% or 85% on the ticket sales, and then it slides and slides, and by like the end of, I don't know. It depends on the where they're at. I don't know what the every deal looks like anymore, but like by the end of the first month, second month, maybe you get to like a 50-50 split, but very rarely does it equitably get any better for the theater. Now, if I'm approaching, and independent theaters have a slightly different way of dealing with that because they're dealing it from a licensing perspective. So it's a little bit different than the way that AMC does. Everyone still has to report numbers. Everyone still has to do all the tracking numbers and all that kind of shit. But you still have. But for independent theaters, it's more of like you will go to a website like it sounds like porn. It's not swank.com. You go to swank.com. Basically, they're a distributor, and what they'll do is they will license you Wonder Woman for a week at X amount of dollars plus X amount of your door. Per day plus your door. There are ways to get around some of that, by the way, either if you're a nonprofit or you're not actually selling tickets And by that I mean do something outside the theater that costs money, and the movie just becomes part of the deal. That's how you get around that. But what they'll do is
You're
they'll
talking like a hacker, man.
I'm talking like a hacker. Well, hack the planet, man. But the thing of that is that like you have to, and we did that at a place that I won't say I worked at publicly because this is on the internet. Yeah, so you they end up getting screwed too. Now imagine a group of independent filmmakers comes to them and says, "We can provide you with stuff that is we can provide you with movies over a longer period of time for less money." Or at the very, maybe not less money, but like a licensing deal that is more equitable for you and sustainable for your theater, where we also make money, and we can also use marketing as a way to target demographically what movie we put in here that may do better in this location. That becomes a game changer for filmmakers, to be able to do that. Now you have to have people that are working on your behalf on the other side of that, and yeah, maybe they'll take a 5%er, or maybe they'll take a 10%er for operating costs or whatever. That said, like that then becomes a viable path forward theatrically. You are now actually making money on your thing, and the most important part of that, you have not given up any rights to your movie, which
In
now
perpetuity throughout the universe.
leaves you open and available to make a deal for your Blu-ray, to make a deal for your streaming, to make a deal for putting it on a bus, putting it on an airplane, putting it on a train, putting it on your underwear. I don't care. Like, and that's the beauty part of it. You have freedom to do that, and we all know that like theatrical is great, and there are ways to profit from theatrically that may not be like your number one profit center, but combined with all of these other things, you can create an environment of an economy that will work for you more than against you. And part of that is because you have control, and because you know where things are going. The reporting is transparent, and you understand where your money is going. That requires organization. That does require people to be on board on every side of that. It requires some risk, but it also requires a lot of education, and it's going to have to get people on board with that is going to be there's definitely going to have to be some kind of case study aspects that'll happen of like, hey, I need you to trust me. We're going to try something new, and move
right.
forward
So what you just said, a case study. That's what I'm trying to do with Some Call It Luck. So
I figured we'd get to that eventually.
I want to, like, I'm going to break some news that I haven't shared publicly. If we can raise $50,000, it covers the first quarter of the movie.
Right.
A friend of mine said, if we can raise 50K, he can bring 250, and then we can shoot the whole movie. If we film the whole, and that's it, like we're talking like good quality stuff, people paid a sustainable living wage for the work that they contribute to the project at every level, except me. If we do that, this will be a case study, and we will distribute it in the way that you and I are having this conversation. We'll try and explore and find these other alternatives for precisely the reasons that they describe. The theaters, the independent theaters, they got into it because they love cinema, not because they want to rake in money. They might also rake in money, but that wasn't the point. The point is they love movies. And how must their heart be broken by watching the thing that they love come and try and screw them?
Yeah.
Like that's got to be heartbreaking. And so we as independent filmmakers can change the model. And someone needs to try it. I'm doing that. Like at every level, from equitable paying people a living wage, myself included. I'm actually limited, like I mentioned. Treating people right on set. Making a movie that is, I think, makes culture better, not worse. That questions the dominant unifying narrative of empire. To do these things, you can't find an investor. And there are a couple of reasons. One, an investor doesn't want to make a movie that directly attacks the means by which they have a ton of money. Two, there is no model for a sustainable ROI at this point, and that has created a crisis in independent film.
Yeah.
The only way to fund a movie at this point as a beta test is to get these donations as a start. If I can prove that there's an audience sufficiently that I can get the 50 grand, then I can raise the rest of the money because I've demonstrated there's an audience. If I demonstrate there's an audience on Seed and Spark, the investor comes. If the investor comes, I can then come, or they might be a donor. I don't know what they are. My friend didn't specify. Then we can go to the theaters and try and prove a different business model. If that business model is successful, if we can get the ROI, you, Nick, and every independent filmmaker listening to this can then say, John did it with some call it luck. My movie is at a similar budget. We are going to do something similar. Mm-hmm. That's the revolution. Then you get the floodgate. Yeah, then you get the organization and collective bargaining that you described.
Yeah, no, yeah. You
so this conversation is not hypothetical. It is really happening right now.
No, at every level, not just if you go to somecallitluck.com and donate or share or whatever for his Seed and Spark, but the conversation that we were all having right now about theatrical distribution and this is not, he's right, this is not hypothetical. These are plans that are actively in process, and things and that are being proven and moving forward on, because there has to be. And part of you were hitting on something just about of like confidence, not confidence of self, but confidence of economy. And the idea of like, it's hard to get people to do things or buy into something, whether it's the audience, whether it's donors, whether it's whatever. If everyone, all they hear is doom and gloom. Oh no, this studio is getting bought by this studio, and no, this door to distribution has been closed, and no, there's no money, and the economy sucks, and this, that, and the other thing, and F this guy, F that guy, whatever, right? If all of that is what they hear, and all we see because of what social media chooses to show us is our industry contracting and problems on top of problems, that creates a crisis of confidence. Mm-hmm. In people wanting to give to movies, people wanting to give.
You break the morale of people.
Absolutely. And going like, well, what's the point? Like, no one will ever see this. I feel that way about doing this show every week, and yet I'm still here 90% of the time when I'm not traveling or whatever, going like, it's important that I'm speaking with people like John, like Ira, like whomever is on the show, because they all have a story. They all deserve to have it shown, and they deserve to speak about it. But I also feel a responsibility to show that like people are still doing things. Like, yeah, there's things happening in the world that are less than ideal or downright fucking horrible, but people are still creating art, people are still promoting art, people are still whatever, trying to engage with culture and broaden it and broaden horizons and all of these things with what they're doing. And I don't care if it's a $50 horror movie or if it's a $200,000, independent film, told in multiple parts in multiple countries. These stories need to be told, because if we all collapse under the weight of, well, fuck
despair.
Yeah, and then we all lose. And not just we as filmmakers or people that support filmmaking, but we as a society and culture also lose. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look at history in like the Library of Alexandria and, the city of Pompeii and all these things, and you kind of go and you go, what was lost when the disasters that hit these things, whether it was disaster or war or whatever, hit these things, you think of what culturally was lost and is only found in fragments, due to archaeology and historians. That is where we are as a society when it comes to film culture as well. I made a comment, I think it was last week's show, or it was recently, where I said I have a binder full of DVDs in my living room that I guarantee, they're all independent films, and I guarantee you that 90%, or maybe there's a handful of people that have ever seen half of these movies. And it was only on the festival circuit. Most of these people were one and done filmmakers that have not made anything else since then. And I am now considering myself the archivist of those films. Like, I probably have one of the only copies, because of how media works with people.
Yeah.
I that's important. You know, that's why when Ira was talking about like his missingmovies.org initiative, I was really on board with that. As someone who used to be a projectionist, someone who has handled film for a living for many, many years. I worked at the studios and doing what I do here, knowing how many filmmakers that I've worked with that are making great films, but are through whatever reason was not sustainable as a career, and so was limited by their ability to share those things. That's important to have a record of that, even just from a record of like were we culturally as a civilization
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
time that this was made.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so
I mean,
that's
like,
a big. I know that was a big like
yeah.
tirade from
No.
me, but
No,
yeah,
I 100%, dude. Like, it's important to know. It's important to watch Riefenstahl's movies that she did for Nazi Germany, so we recognize what blatant propaganda of the rise of fascism looks like. We hear the language,
yeah,
we see the use of symbolism, and so we can, when we see it again, we're like, oh yeah, that's Lenny. This is what they're trying to do.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, some of it is very obvious these days, but yeah, but yeah, that said, yeah, definitely check out somecallitluck.com. It'll redirect you over to the Seed and Spark campaign, and look, I love what Seed and Spark does. Yeah, I love what Seed and Spark does and how they do it. I love the tools that they make available to filmmakers as part of their offerings and what they're doing. I would love for everyone also to have just a just brief. I know we already hit the hour mark, but you know it's the internet. I don't give a shit. I would love for people to also know John had made a movie prior to what he's trying to do with Some Call It Luck, and it's called Algorithm. And you mentioned the word algorithm like a bunch of times in the beginning of the show, and I really wanted to pick up on that and segue, but I didn't get the opportunity because the conversation went elsewhere. But you did this great movie called Algorithm that I would love for you to tell people a little bit about that and the distribution that have with that. If anyone is doubting the gentleman here's ability to pull in an audience, especially over time. Algorithm is a fantastic example of why Some Call It Luck will be successful. So please elaborate.
So algorithm, we the story came from, I was reading. I realized that there needed to be a movie about computer hackers because there hadn't been a realistic one since Hackers, and or Sneakers or something like that. But it had been like over a decade, 2 decades. So I realized there was a space and something that needed to be talked about. The story I came up with was as when I started to delve in, like, what is the actual story? What do hackers think? What is their ethos? I started to notice all of this stuff about the National Security Agency gathering everybody's data, and so I just wrote a story of an independent hacker randomly discovering that. And I wrote this before Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden is, in case you haven't heard of him, he was a hacker for the Navy and then got kind of co-opted into CIA, NSA area. He leaked that the NSA was actually doing all of this stuff. I figured it out before that because the data was actually out there.
Yeah.
And a few companies were not too discreet about it. Anyway, so I made that, wrote the script. Got it to the point where it's good. Took quite a few iterations. I reached out to people in the space, influencers in the space, and I don't mean the word influencer the way it's currently used. I mean people. So if I want to talk to computer hackers, I talk to the people who have the podcasts that speak to the system administrators, which are those are the elite hackers. They're called system administrators on their LinkedIn bio. Those people listen to. I went to them and I said, I'm making a movie. Those people were like, heck yeah, come on, man. So that allowed me to raise money. I ran one crowdfunding campaign hoping for 50 grand. We got 37. We made zero. That was on Kickstarter, all or nothing.
Yeah.
I was unhappy with that. I rebooted it. I called it Algorithm on the second round, and we raised. I was trying to raise 30 grand. We raised 8, but I raised it on a site that I'm not going to mention. So please don't fill it in because I don't like them and I don't want to promote them. But it was not all or nothing. I got what I whatever I raised, I got to keep. We made Algorithm for $8,000. Everybody worked for free because it was a good script and they were tired of being on soap operas or making corporate commercials. So we got top tier people doing top tier work. We filmed in San Francisco. San Francisco is an insanely film friendly city. We could get permits in 24 hours for next to no money. We asked the library to shoot there. They let us shoot there for free because we weren't invasive. We knocked on people's mansions' doors and asked them to film in their house, and they said yes. That does not happen in Los Angeles. So we made that, finished it. A guy out of Scotland, Stu Kennedy, contacted me, said he wanted to write the score for free. He had done some work for BBC television. I loved what he produced, and it was perfect for Algorithm. We brought it to the studios, and the studios didn't know what to do with it. It didn't have any naked people. It didn't have any famous people. It wasn't in a definable genre, although now I know it to be crime noir. I didn't then. The hackers were not super ninjas, so there were no explosions. Hollywood didn't know what to do with it. That was at the American film market, and so they're like, we're not sure what to do with this. My fellow producers and I decided we're just going to throw it up on the internet for 24 hours and see what happens. We don't know what to do with it. We're just going to kind of beta test it. In that 24 hours, with zero paid promotion, it got well over 1 million views. Just immediately went viral. Most of the people in Hollywood after that knew about it. They probably saw it in that 24-hour time frame. We tried to take it to festivals. Most of the festivals said no. It screened in Orlando and at 3 major hacker conventions, including DEF CON, which is where that's where the CIA goes to hire people, in case you're wondering. NSA as well. I did the same thing in London for where GCHQ hires, and also in New York City for 2600. It's called Hope. That's what their convention is. Screened there, the hackers loved it. Then we just put it up on YouTube because no one else wanted it. We didn't want it to just sit on an archive like you were talking about, where nobody sees it.
Yeah.
And it again went viral. 10 years after it's been out, it still gets between 30 and 60,000 views a month, every single month. All around the world. It's in 18 languages, seen in every single country on the planet.
But of course, and we've had this conversation as well because of
including Antarctica.
Because of how YouTube has changed their monetization model over the years. You have continuously gotten fucked for that.
Yeah. So 30,000 views a month equals about $2 to me. And it was, when it first started, before Adpocalypse, you can look that up for what that was. It was making over $1,000 a month, which is really good for a movie that costs $8,000. It did make its money back. We tripled the budget in its return. So that's where Algorithm's at. It's still on YouTube. You can watch it on thehackermovie.com.
thehackermovie.com. And yeah, so I know I brought that up as a means to kind of segue over to, if everyone is thinking about Some Call It Luck is like, well, should we take a chance on this guy? He's kind of this unknown. They're like, no, dude, you're not taking a chance. This gentleman has proven his track record of success in the past. So I highly recommend that anyone who is thinking of donating to Some Call It Luck over at somecallitluck.com.
I should have mentioned this. Algorithm has almost 14 million views.
There you go. I mean, there's definitely an audience for John's movies, and so if that can also help lay the groundwork a little bit to get you to donate or share over at for his film here, Some Call It Luck. I definitely recommend checking that out as well, because I get it. Some people are nervous about investing in what would be like they consider like a first time filmmaker or something. Well, I'm just letting you know, John has done this before to success. So there you go.
Thank you.
No problem. You got to establish credential, sir. And you have it. You've been doing this for a while. John has been in the industry almost as long, or if not longer, than I have, and so there's he's one of the OG film snobbery people. I wish there were still more of you around. But there's kind of to my previous point, like there's just so many people that are just not in the industry anymore. I've looked a bunch of them up, and I'm just like, they're not online any more than I would have. Like, they could be dead. Some of them are. I have like 3 writers from Film Snobbery that are just dead now, and I'm like, that's crazy. Like,
There's
filmmakers,
hope.
same thing.
Also, people are dead.
Also, people are dead.
But don't give up. This industry's really hard, but don't give up.
Yeah.
Tyranny's coming, but don't give up.
But don't give up. Some people are dead, but don't give up. No. Look, I didn't say how they died. I didn't say the movies killed them.
Yeah.
It's, but no,
they were whistleblowers for Boeing. That's how they died.
And by the way, so if you folks are interested more or less in John's movies, John also has a book that he's working on that also may tie in a little bit, may have whatever. And that one is Death. Is it still called Death Row Book Club?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
That's the spiritual prequel from which Some Call It Luck emerged, and that will be given away to all backers in ebook form, either PDF or a Kindle readable format.
Yeah.
For free, and then it will be released when I have time to get around to it.
Yeah, and that said, so
on Amazon.
Yeah, if you are a person who is you're like, I like movies, but maybe this movie isn't for me. Okay, well that's groovy. Share out somecallitluck.com. But then, also if you just go like, oh, you know what though? If I back this, I get a book. Maybe you're a reader.
That book was a limited series before it became a book, and Hollywood really didn't want to make that movie for reasons that will be unambiguously clear as you read it.
Yeah, and by the way, like I know that John and myself as well for some of this can probably come off a little conspiracy theorist about some of this shit, but believe me, like when I say that John has experienced a lot of things that have happened in Hollywood, whether it's IP theft or just the string of no because it doesn't have this, that, or the other thing, or what. If there is an excuse to be had, John has heard it. I've heard a lot of them myself, sometimes secondhand, sometimes firsthand, if I'm standing next to a filmmaker. Some of these things are things that filmmakers are experiencing every day, but they're not talking about it. And a lot of that has to do with like, well, I don't want people to know, A, someone said no to me, or B, hi, Luna girl. My dog decided to come down and say hello.
Well, that like it's not. We're not going off into northern Idaho and surrounding our homes with tinfoil and buying an arsenal. We're saying,
not yet.
This crap is real. Let's build a better system that doesn't do these things.
Yeah,
so it's not. It's a beneficial response, not merely self-preservation.
And by the way, like from my conversations with people over this industry that are not just filmmakers, a lot of them agree. Like there is a path forward for some of the using some of the ideas that we're having here, and they are also keen to find out where this how this will work and join into it. Of course, some people want to join only after it's been proven, and I get that, but we're a very risk-averse industry. But the great part about independent film is everything in independent film involves risk. So you might as well jump in the pool. The water's fine. It's not fire.
There is water.
There is water. Yeah, I think actually that's the theme of the entire show is like, there is water. We can tread it. It's cool. Like, it looks like the pool's on fire. It's not. Like, there's water in there, I promise.
Yeah.
No, I want to, thank you for coming on the show, obviously, John, and we've talked before on the show, and last time we talked, I think it was more geared towards algorithm stuff and all of that, and I think it was back in LA. Like, I think that's how far it was when you were on the show. Yeah,
you were right next to a porn studio, as I recall.
We were right next to Vivid. Vivid Video. I remember that. That was always an interesting walk into work. But it was really good. Yeah, that was over in Universal City area. That whole area. That was fun. Also really fun because walking distance to an In-N-Out burger, and I miss that.
And Coffee Sound.
Yeah. I miss the post show In-N-Out burger run.
that was we did that. I remember that. That was fun.
That was fun. I miss that so much. And
Yeah,
that
yeah.
there, I've talked more and more with my wife, about the idea of like moving to anywhere other outside of LA was always supposed to be like this temporary thing where we may decide to come back at some point once, monetarily we were able to command better salaries or whatever, due to what we do. And I'm like, that's still on the for me, that's still on the table. I would still love to do that. I just have not figured out the viable way back yet. But I miss a lot of aspects about it.
Yeah.
I felt healthier there, which is weird to say considering the air quality. But I felt more me.
Yeah.
Being back in Massachusetts, it's weird. We're a very liberal state in most cases, but I still don't feel that same like let your freak flag fly like you have in LA, where while I don't subscribe to all of the things that LA offers in terms of like I'm going to be 25 for life, those kind of things I don't really subscribe to, but and mostly just because my body won't allow me to do that. But I
There
think
is a sense there that filmmaking is possible because you're constantly surrounded by people who are
creatively,
doing it in the industry. You see these giant structures built to make them. Like
yeah,
they're in front of you. This is the factory. Therefore, the thing can happen.
yeah, and
Therefore, you can do it.
it really is like being at a film festival all day every day forever, because
Yeah.
you're just surrounded by that energy all the time. Also, pollution and homeless people, but like you take the good with the bad. But
There's water, Nick. Remember, there's
there's
water. That's
water,
just
yeah.
not where they told us.
Especially right now, all the rain you guys have had. That's you definitely. There's actual water in the LA River. That's crazy to me. I've seen pictures of that recently, and I was like, no.
Yeah.
Because I used to walk by that. I used to ride my bike down that stuff. That's crazy. But yeah, I want to encourage everyone to check out somecallitluck.com. Check out the video thing a week that John does, leading up to this, check out his little past catalog of those videos that John does. He's a very thoughtful human being, and I appreciate that. Not a lot of people take that time to be as reflective, inwardly and outwardly, as John does. And I also compliment him on his willingness and understanding of like his fight and what he's trying to do is not just about him. He wants to share experiences and see other people succeed as well. And that is not only for other fellow filmmakers, but even for lowly film critics like myself. So it's always greatly appreciated and always warranted to throw him a shout out for his stuff. And even when we don't agree, it's still always a fantastic conversation.
Before we go, one of your recent guests, if you enjoyed talking to Calvin Vanderbeek, Guerrilla Producer, he is a consulting producer on Some Call It Luck.
See? There you go. Everyone's together. That's how this
Yeah.
works. Calvin's going to be pissed off now that I haven't even talked to him about it yet, but he's going to be pissed off to find out that they moved AFM from like right down the street from his house to Las Vegas.
It's in Vegas now?
It's in Vegas now, supposedly.
Calvin lives about 50 minutes away from Santa Monica, so Vegas and Santa Monica are about almost equidistant for him.
Santa Monica is. I miss Santa Monica. I have yeah. Anyway, sorry. You just made me wistful for half a second. I was taken back to.
I pegged you for Venice, man.
I'm not a Venice guy. I tried Venice. I've gone down like the Venice Boardwalk and all that kind of stuff. Didn't really dig Venice as much.
Totally Third Street Promenade is better than Venice Boardwalk.
Yeah. I enjoy. Let's see. If I had to pick my favorite place in LA, it was. What's the neighborhood where the Dresden is? And Fred 62 and all of that. Do you remember? It's
so
not
I
quite
live
close for
I
these,
live
but
about an hour and a half or 45 minutes, depending on traffic, away from Los Angeles. So I'm not familiar with the neighborhoods as much
I'm
as
sorry.
I read on.
But I will say that, all right, so I was living in Highland Park the majority of the
Okay.
time I was living in LA, and I loved Highland Park. I know that everyone's like, oh, it's gentrified and blah, blah, blah. Like, great, whatever. Um,
You
Good
would not
bars,
have
good
thought
food.
that if you had visited Nick's house, which I did.
Yeah, yeah, that was a, yeah. I don't miss that apartment. I miss the rent. The rent was fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. Not the
Everything
drug
I
raids.
Yeah, everything I had to do outside of that there sucked. But the walking distance too, I had a fantastic like burrito truck. I had a
Yeah, yeah.
fantastic bar. There was good there was one of those Mexican grocery stores, like a Super A, like right
Yeah,
across
yeah.
the street.
Yep.
So like everything for me was very self-contained. And as someone who existed in LA without a car for a particular period of time, we were also right on the Gold Line. So like I would just drive down there, or not drive, but like ride a bike or walk down there. I know we're completely off the rails.
Have I ADHD'd us past the limit of the show?
Yeah. Yeah, now I'm just being
Sorry.
wistful for LA, you know? We're done now with that. But that said, all right, everyone, stay tuned. I would say next week we do not have a show because I will be at the Boston Underground Film Festival. After that, you heard me talk at the top of the show. I am going to be at Panic Fest in Kansas City. I will be at Jacksonville, Florida, for the film festival there. I might also have another quick stop in Georgia. We'll figure out what happens shortly about that. I'll keep everyone involved and informed. Once again, the things that we were discussing in this show were not hypothetical necessarily. So we are working on a lot of the things you've heard us talk about behind the scenes, and if you are interested in joining in that independent film revolution, please contact me at FilmSnobbery. You can send me an email there, or find me on Twitter at FilmSnobbery on Twitter. I refuse to call it the other thing. Or at FilmSnobbery on almost every social media platform except for Instagram, which is film_snobbery. Where can the folks find you, John?
I am Brand X John, Jon, on all social medias, including the ones you mentioned. My primary website is thebxi, thebxi.com, and some call it luck.
And some
Dot com.
luck.com. Yeah, and that's where you can get information about his campaign, donate
Yeah.
or share.
If you're a filmmaker and you're interested in this revolution, like hit me up. I want to see your stuff. We need more people because it's real and it's necessary.
Things like, having a list of publicity, publicists or entertainment
Yeah.
journalists. Things like
Yep.
having a list of independent film theaters. All of these different things. These lists exist. We have them. I even have a list. I'll share it with you. We haven't even talked about this. I'll share it with you. I have a list a friend gave me of film schools, but specifically contacts within film schools, because one of the conversations we had at one point was the university circuit.
Yeah.
Shout out to Dan Mervish for recommending that. And,
We can shout out Dan Mervish for no reason at all
Jesus
because he's
Christ.
extraordinary.
All day, every day. One of the greatest aspects of my career to date was spending a weekend carting Dan Mervish around the South Georgia Film Festival, for the pure fact of it allowed me the time to be able to get to know him as a person, which is
I want to sit in a circle, in the center of a circle between Dan Mervish, Marty Lang, and Ava DuVernay, and just like absorb their energy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I would love to talk with Ava again. I getting to interview her at Sundance years ago was also a highlight of my career.
Dude, she's actively looking for people to interview her right now.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I'll freaking reach out to her.
For her movie
for Origin.
Origin.
Yeah, I would absolutely talk to her.
I'm pretty sure she's self-distributing it too, so that'll be an interesting conversation.
Through Array Releasing or
something like that.
Yeah. Anyway, so yes, check out the next show when we announce it. We're traveling quite a bit right now. We being the royal we, me is traveling, promoting behind the scenes of indie film marketing, Film Snobbery Field Guide, which will be available in June from Routledge Focal Press. And I'm actually turning in the index and my final changes this weekend. I'll probably turn it in, so they'll get it next week. And then once that's done, I saw Marty Lang for his book posted some. He's finally got some of his proofs and stuff too, so we're like neck and neck on our stuff. I'm really excited for where that's going and what's happening. I will say I could use a couple extra bucks. So, for all this travel, I don't make any money really doing reviews for Film Snobbery because I don't believe in charging for reviews. But that situation does mean that I don't need to make a buck or two to be able to promote this thing. And honestly, I've got some great filmmakers in this book. I've got some great information in this book. I want to get it in as many hands as possible. I don't have time or bandwidth to do a crowdfunding campaign right now, so I planned on doing one, and I'm just like, I can't drop this on top of everything else I've got going, so it wouldn't be responsible of me. It just wouldn't be my best work.
You'd melt.
Yeah, so that said, again, thank you, John, for coming on the show. We'll see everyone in the
Thanks for
coming
having
weeks.
me, man.
Dude, it's me. And we'll go from there. So thanks, folks. Have a great night, and viva la revolution!